It's Friday night, 9:47 p.m., and your phone just exploded with notifications. The group chat is going absolutely nuclear. Where are you? Bro, we're at Miller's. Shots on Derek. Get here now. You look at your phone. Then you look at the Tupperware container in front of you containing Thursday's leftover chicken and rice that you're reheating for the third time this week. You're sitting at your kitchen table in sweatpants, alone. The apartment is quiet except for the hum of your refrigerator and the distant sound of someone's TV through the wall. Your friends are 7 blocks away dropping $100 each on craft IPAs and overpriced wings. And you're eating meal prep that cost you $4 total while watching a YouTube video about compound interest. You feel like a loser. You feel like you're missing out. You feel like everyone else figured out how to have fun and you're the only one who didn't get the memo. Here's what nobody tells you about that feeling. That hollow, anxious, FOMO-drenched sensation in your chest? That's not failure. That's the price of admission. Because building actual wealth in America in 2026 requires something that sounds almost un-American to say out loud. It requires isolation. Not the Instagram aesthetic kind where you post pictures of your morning routine with the caption, grinding in silence. I mean real, uncomfortable, Friday night sitting at home while everyone else is living their best life isolation. The kind that makes you question whether you're making a huge mistake. The kind where you start wondering if maybe Dave Ramsey is actually a cult leader and you've been brainwashed. Let me explain why this happens, why it's actually necessary, and why the loneliness you feel right now is the filter that separates people who talk about wealth from people who actually build it. Let's start with something most personal finance experts are too polite to say directly. The majority of your friendships are not based on genuine connection. They're based on synchronized consumption. Think about the last 5 times you hung out with your friend group. I'll wait. Okay, got them? Now let me guess. Dinner and drinks, brunch, concert or sporting event, weekend trip, someone's birthday at a restaurant. I'm right, aren't I? Now here's the uncomfortable question. If you removed the spending component from those activities, would those friendships still exist? If you said, hey, let's just hang out at the park and talk for 2 hours, would they show up? For most people, the honest answer is no. And that's not because your friends are bad people. It's because modern American social life is fundamentally structured around commerce. We have outsourced human connection to businesses. We don't know how to bond without a transaction happening. You want to catch up with someone? You don't invite them for a walk. You suggest drinks. You want to celebrate something? You don't gather people in your living room. You make a reservation. The restaurant is the venue. The bar is the backdrop. Spending money together is how we perform friendship in 2026. And here's where it gets expensive. There's an unspoken minimum spend to maintain your position in most social circles. In a typical mid-tier American city, one dinner with friends runs you $40 to $60 after tip. One night at the bars, $70 to $100 if you're keeping pace with the group. A concert, add another $150. A weekend trip, you're looking at $300 to $500 minimum. If you're hanging out with your friends twice a week, which is pretty standard for people in their 20s and 30s, you're burning through $400 to $600 a month just on maintaining friendships. That's $7,200 a year. That's not rent. That's not groceries. That's not your car payment. That's the social tax, the cover charge for not being left out. Now, here's what happens when you decide to stop paying it. Let's say you wake up one day and realize you're 29 years old with $1,100 in your savings account, and you're one car repair away from complete financial collapse. You decide to get serious, you read some books, you make a budget. You realize that your latte isn't the problem, your $400 monthly bar tab is the problem. So you start saying no. Can't make it tonight, I'm trying to save money. The first time you say this, your friends are supportive. Totally understand, man. Good for you. The second time, they're still cool but slightly less enthusiastic. No worries next time. The third time, the invitations start to slow down. By the 4th and 5th time, they stop asking. And here's the thing that hurts. Nobody gets mad at you. Nobody has a confrontation. You don't have a falling out, they just gradually start making plans without you. The group chat goes quiet. You stop seeing the "what are we doing tonight" messages. You're still technically friends. You're still connected on social media. You still get the occasional "we should catch up soon" text that never turns into actual plans. But functionally, you've been voted off the island. And you didn't even do anything wrong. You just stopped spending money. This is where we need to talk about the crab bucket theory, because it explains perfectly why this happens. The idea comes from commercial crab fishing. When fishermen catch crabs, they throw them in a bucket. Here's the weird part. You don't need a lid on the bucket. The crabs won't escape. You know why? Because every time one crab tries to climb out, the other crabs grab it and pull it back down. Not because they're malicious, not because they have a meeting and decide we need to keep everyone stuck in this bucket. They do it instinctively. They do it because one crab escaping makes the others look bad by comparison. It highlights their own captivity. So they pull, they claw, they drag the climber back to the bottom. Your friend group is a crab bucket. Not because they're evil, not because they don't love you, but because your decision to stop spending money to get serious about building wealth, to sacrifice short-term fun for long-term freedom, that decision is a mirror. It reflects back to them their own financial dysfunction. When you're at home eating leftovers and learning about Roth IRAs while they're at the bar on their third $18 cocktail, you're not just making a different choice. You're making them confront their choice. Your absence is a critique of their presence. Your saving is an indictment of their spending. And most people cannot handle that level of self-reflection. So they do what the crabs do. They pull. Not with their hands, with their words. You're being too extreme. You need to live a little. You're going to regret not enjoying your 20s. Money isn't everything. You're becoming boring. Every single one of these statements is a claw, trying to drag you back into the bucket. And here's the most insidious part. They deliver these statements as if they care about you, as if they're worried about your well-being. I'm just concerned you're becoming obsessed with money, man. That's not healthy. Translation. Your financial discipline is making me uncomfortable about my financial chaos, and I need you to stop so I can feel better about myself. Let me be very clear about something. The people who are comfortable being broke will never celebrate you getting rich. They can't. It's psychologically impossible. Because your success doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in comparison to their stagnation. When you were broke together, there was equality. There was shared struggle. There was camaraderie in complaining about rent and joking about being poor. That's a bond. A weird, dysfunctional bond, but a bond nonetheless. When you break that bond by actually doing something about your situation, you become a threat. Not to their safety, to their identity. Because if you can escape, that means they can too. And if they can, but they're not, that means they're choosing to stay stuck. And nobody wants to admit they're choosing to stay stuck. It's much easier to pull you back down and pretend that escape is impossible for everyone. This is why lottery winners lose their friends. This is why people who get promoted suddenly find their work friendships cooling off. This is why the moment you start taking your financial life seriously, your phone gets quieter. It's not personal, it's psychological self-preservation. Your growth threatens their stagnation. Your discipline highlights their lack of it. Your future success will be their past failure made visible, so they pull. Now, here's where most people make a catastrophic mistake. They feel the pull, they feel the loneliness, they feel the social pressure, and they crack. They go back to the bar, they go back to the dinners, they go back to the spending. Not because they want to, but because being broke together feels better than being disciplined alone. This is the moment where 90% of people fail. Not because they don't know what to do financially. Everyone knows what to do. Spend less than you earn. Invest the difference. Don't carry credit card debt. This is not secret information. People fail because they cannot handle the social cost of doing it. They cannot handle being the person who stays home on Friday night. They cannot handle watching Instagram stories of their friends having fun without them. They cannot handle the guilt of saying no. They cannot handle being perceived as cheap or boring or changed. So they rejoin the bucket. They tell themselves they'll start saving next month. They tell themselves they can have balance. They tell themselves that their mental health is more important than their bank account, as if those two things aren't directly connected. And they stay broke. Forever. But here's what happens if you don't crack. Here's what happens if you embrace the isolation instead of running from it. You filter. See, losing these friends is not the problem. Losing these friends is the solution. Because what you're actually losing is drinking buddies masquerading as deep relationships. You're losing consumption partners who were only around when you were spending. You're losing people whose friendship had a price tag attached. And in losing them, you create space. Space for a different kind of person. Space for growth partners instead of spending partners. Let me explain the difference. A drinking buddy needs you to stay at their level. A growth partner wants you to exceed it. A drinking buddy feels threatened by your progress. A growth partner feels inspired by it. A drinking buddy bonds over complaints. A growth partner bonds over solutions. A drinking buddy texts you at 9 p.m. on Friday asking where you are. A growth partner texts you at 9 a.m. on Saturday asking if you've read that book they recommended. These people exist, but you will never meet them while you're at the bar with the crabs. You will never meet them while you're trying to maintain friendships that require you to stay financially dysfunctional. You will only meet them in the space that isolation creates. This is where I need to introduce you to a concept that sounds extreme, but is actually the most practical advice I can give you. Monk mode. Not the YouTube aesthetic version, the real version. Here's what it looks like. For 6 to 12 months, you become functionally antisocial. You stop going to bars. You stop going to restaurants. You stop taking trips. You stop buying concert tickets. You stop doing anything that costs money and involves other people. You don't make a big announcement about it. You don't post on social media about your journey. You just quietly exit. You respond to invitations with simple, honest answers. Can't make it tonight, I'm working on some stuff. You don't explain. You don't justify. You don't defend. You just decline. And you use the time and money you've recovered to build your foundation. Here's what that foundation looks like in practical terms. You spend every evening learning a skill that increases your income. Not a hobby, not something fun. A skill that someone will pay you for. Copywriting, coding, video editing, graphic design, sales. Whatever aligns with your strengths and the market's needs. You spend your weekends applying for better jobs or building a side business. You spend your money paying off debt and building an emergency fund. You track every dollar. You automate your savings. You open a Roth IRA. You buy your first index fund. You read books about money instead of watching Netflix. You watch YouTube videos about investing instead of scrolling TikTok. You cook every meal at home. You work out in your apartment. You go to bed at 9:30 p.m. Your life becomes small, quiet, and incredibly boring by conventional standards. And that's the point. Because here's what nobody tells you about loneliness. Loneliness is not the absence of people. Loneliness is the absence of purpose. When you're sitting at home on Friday night because you're too broke to do anything, that's loneliness. You're isolated and directionless. But when you're sitting at home on Friday night because you're building something, because you're working toward a specific goal, because every hour of solitude is an investment in your future, that's not loneliness, that's focus. The loneliness you feel during monk mode is not a bug. It's a feature. It's the emotional price you pay for opting out of the consumption treadmill. It's the filter that separates people who want to be rich from people who are willing to do what it takes to get there. And more importantly, it's temporary. 6 months, 12 months maximum. That's it. That's not a long time. You've already wasted more time than that scrolling social media and wondering why you're broke. The difference is this time, the loneliness has a purpose. This time, the isolation is productive. This time, you're not avoiding people because you're depressed. You're avoiding people because you're building something they can't see yet. And here's what happens at the end of that period. Here's what happens when you come out the other side. You'll have $10,000 to $15,000 saved. You'll have a new skill that increased your income by 20 to 30%. You'll have paid off your credit cards. You'll have a Roth IRA that's actually funded. You'll have lost 15 pounds because you stopped eating garbage at 2 a.m. after the bar. You'll have read 15 books. You'll have built something. And the friends who disappeared? Most of them won't come back. And that's perfect. Because the ones who do come back will come back different. They'll come back because they saw what you did and it inspired them. They'll come back as growth partners, not drinking buddies. And you'll meet new people, people who are on the same path, people who understand that building wealth requires sacrifice, people who don't need to spend money to have a good time, people who text you about books and investments and business ideas instead of, where are we going tonight? These relationships will feel different. They'll feel deeper. Because they're not based on synchronized consumption. They're based on synchronized growth. Let me paint you a picture of what the alternative looks like, because I need you to understand what you're actually choosing between. Scenario A, you maintain the friendships. You keep going out. You keep spending. You keep prioritizing social acceptance over financial progress. 5 years from now, you're 34 years old. You still have those friends. You're still going to the same bars, having the same conversations, making the same jokes. Your bank account has $3,200 in it. You're still renting. You still drive the same car. You still have credit card debt. You still feel that low-grade anxiety every time you check your bank balance. You still can't afford to take a real vacation. You still can't afford to quit a job you hate. You're still one emergency away from catastrophe. But hey, you're not lonely. You've got drinking buddies. Scenario B. You embrace the isolation. You do the monk mode period. You lose most of your friends. 5 years from now, you're 34 years old. You have $75,000 invested. You have no debt. You own a small rental property. You have a skill that earns you 6 figures. You have friends, but they're different friends. Friends who own businesses. Friends who read books. Friends who talk about ideas instead of people. You can quit your job tomorrow if you want to. You can take a month off and travel if you feel like it. You sleep well at night because you're not terrified of your bank account. You're not rich yet, but you're free. Actually free. Not, I can afford to go to the bar, free. I can afford to say no to anything I don't want to do, free. Which scenario sounds better? Be honest. Because the choice you make in the next 6 months determines which scenario you get. And I need you to understand something crucial. You don't get to have both. You don't get to maintain the spending-based friendships and build serious wealth. Not in the beginning. Not when you're starting from broke. Maybe later, when you have money, you can afford to be more social. Maybe when you're actually wealthy, you can go to the bar, and it doesn't matter because it's 0.001% of your net worth. But right now you're choosing. And most people choose wrong because they don't understand what they're actually choosing between. They think they're choosing between having friends and having money. That's not the choice. The choice is between having people who need you to stay broke so they feel better about themselves and having the space to become the person you're capable of becoming. The choice is between being popular in the bucket and escaping the bucket. The choice is between short-term comfort and long-term freedom. Let's talk about what you actually do during this isolation period, because I don't want you to think this is just about sitting at home being miserable. This is not about punishment. This is about reallocation. Every dollar you're not spending at the bar is a dollar that goes toward your foundation. Every Friday night you're not hungover on Saturday morning is a Saturday morning you can use to learn and build. Here's the math that nobody shows you. Let's say you're currently spending $500 a month on social activities. Bars, restaurants, concerts, trips, whatever. That's $6,000 a year. If you cut that to zero and invest that money instead in a basic index fund that returns 8% annually, in 10 years, you'll have $91,000. Let me say that again. The money you're spending on maintaining friendships with people who don't actually care about your future is worth $91,000 over the next decade. That's not theory. That's math. That's compound interest. That's what you're trading. You're trading long-term financial security for short-term social validation. And the worst part? The social validation is fake. The friends you're trying to keep by spending money, they're not actually your friends. Real friends don't abandon you when you stop spending. Real friends support you when you're trying to improve your life. Real friends stick around during the boring months when you're building your foundation. The people who disappear when you stop buying drinks, those are customers, not friends. You were providing a service, entertainment, companionship, someone to split the bill with, and they were consuming it. When you stopped providing it, they found another supplier. Here's what you do instead. You build your financial foundation with the intensity of someone who understands they're running out of time. Because you are. If you're in your 20s or 30s right now, you have maybe a 10 to 15-year window where you can build serious wealth through aggressive saving and investing before life gets more complicated. Before you have kids. Before you have aging parents to take care of. Before your body starts breaking down and healthcare costs explode. This is your window. And you're spending it at the bar. You're spending it maintaining friendships that require you to stay broke. Let me tell you what happens if you waste this window. You hit 45 with no savings, no investments, no assets, and a lifetime of memories from bars you can't even remember the names of. You hit 50 and realize you can't retire, ever. You'll work until you're 75 because you spent your prime earning years funding someone else's good time. That's not a life. That's a slow-motion financial suicide. So here's what you do during monk mode. You get a second job or start a side hustle, and you pour every extra dollar into 3 buckets in this exact order. Bucket 1. Emergency fund. Minimum $1,000. Target 3 to 6 months of expenses. This goes in a high-yield savings account. This is your I lost my job or my car exploded money. Bucket 2. High-interest debt. Credit cards, personal loans. Anything above 6% interest. You attack this with religious intensity. Every extra dollar goes here until it's gone. Bucket 3. Investment account. Once buckets 1 and 2 are handled, you open a Roth IRA and you buy index funds. VO, VTI. Whatever tracks the S&P 500. You set up automatic investments. You never look at it. You let compound interest do its thing for the next 30 years. While you're doing this, you're also investing in yourself. You're learning skills that increase your income, not feel-good hobby skills, market skills, skills that solve expensive problems for people and businesses. If you're stuck in a $40,000 a year job, your goal is to be at $60,000 within 18 months. That's not unrealistic. That's very doable if you develop one valuable skill and get aggressive about applying for new positions. Every $1,000 you add to your annual income is worth way more than $1,000. Because that raise compounds every year, and because it increases your savings capacity permanently. A person making 40,000 who saves 10% has 4,000 a year to invest. A person making 60,000 who saves 10% has 6,000 a year to invest. That's a 50% increase in wealth building capacity from one job change. And you stack these. Better job leads to more savings, leads to more investing, leads to more passive income, leads to more freedom, leads to the ability to take more risks, leads to even better opportunities. But none of this happens while you're at the bar. None of this happens while you're trying to maintain friendships with people whose entire social life revolves around spending money they don't have on experiences they won't remember. You need space. You need silence. You need isolation. Not forever, just long enough to build the foundation. And here's what happens when you do this. Here's what happens when you actually commit to the lonely period instead of running from it. You change, not just financially, psychologically. You stop needing external validation. You stop needing Friday night plans to feel like your life has value. You stop defining yourself by how many people showed up to your birthday party. You develop an internal locus of control. You realize that your worth is not determined by your social calendar. You realize that being alone is not the same as being lonely. You realize that you actually enjoy your own company. And this changes everything. Because once you stop needing people, you can start choosing people. You're no longer accepting friendships out of desperation or fear of being alone. You're selecting relationships based on mutual growth and genuine connection. You're not trying to fill a void. You're trying to build something. And the people you attract at this stage are completely different from the people you had before. They're people who are also building. People who also went through their own monk mode period. People who understand that real friendship doesn't require a bar tab. These relationships are deeper, more meaningful, and infinitely more valuable than the surface-level consumption partnerships you lost. Let me address the thing you're probably thinking right now. But I don't want to be a hermit. I don't want to have no social life. I don't want to be miserable. I get it. And I'm not suggesting you become a complete recluse. I'm suggesting you redefine what social means. During monk mode, you can still see people. You just see them differently. Instead of meeting at restaurants, you meet at parks for walks. Instead of going to bars, you invite people over to your place for a movie. Instead of spending money on concerts, you find free events in your city. Instead of taking expensive trips, you do day hikes. The point is not to eliminate human connection. The point is to eliminate the commerce requirement for human connection. And here's what you'll discover. The people who only want to hang out if money is being spent will disappear immediately. And good. Let them. They were never your friends anyway. The people who stick around when you suggest free activities, those are your actual friends. Those are the people worth investing time in. And you'll be shocked by how few of them there are. Most people will have 0 to 2. And that's fine. 2 real friends are worth more than 20 fake friends. I also want to address the "you're going to regret not enjoying your youth" argument because I hear this all the time and it makes me want to flip a table. Let me explain what you'll actually regret. You know what you'll regret at 45? Being broke. You know what you won't regret? Missing bar nights in your 20s. You know what actually makes people bitter and resentful in middle age? Not having options. Being trapped in jobs they hate because they can't afford to leave. Being unable to help their kids. Being financially dependent on others. Being stressed about money constantly. That's what creates regret. Not missing Friday night drinks. I have never, not once, met a 50-year-old who said, "Man, I really regret saving and investing in my 20s. I wish I'd spent more money at bars." Never. Not one time. You know what I have met? Hundreds of 50-year-olds who said, "I wish I'd started taking money seriously when I was younger. I wish I hadn't wasted so much on stupid stuff. I wish someone had told me how compound interest works." The regret goes one direction. Always. You will regret staying broke. You will not regret building wealth, period. So let's bring this full circle. It's Friday night. Your friends are at the bar. You're at home. You feel lonely. Here's what you need to understand about that feeling. That loneliness is not a warning sign that you're making a mistake. It's a confirmation that you're doing something right. It's the emotional price of opting out of the system that keeps people broke. It's the cover charge for financial freedom. And it's temporary. 6 months from now, you'll have $5,000 saved and a new skill that increased your income. 12 months from now, you'll have $12,000 invested and a completely different peer group. 24 months from now, you won't even remember the names of half the people who stopped calling. Because you'll be too busy building the life they said was impossible. You'll be too busy experiencing actual freedom to care about being popular in the bucket. And the best part? The absolute best part? Some of those crabs will watch you escape. They'll watch you build wealth while they stayed stuck. And a few of them, maybe 1 or 2, will realize they can escape too. They'll reach out. They'll ask how you did it. They'll want to learn. and you'll help them. Not because you need them, but because you remember what the bucket felt like. And you remember that somebody had to climb out first to prove it was possible. The loneliness you feel right now is not a bug in the system. It's the system working exactly as designed. It's filtering out the people who need you to fail so they can feel better about not trying. It's creating space for the people who will celebrate your success instead of resenting it. It's the initiation fee for the next level of your life. And yes, it hurts. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, you'll have moments where you question everything, where you wonder if you're being extreme, where you consider just going back to normal and accepting that you'll always be broke. But here's what you need to remember in those moments. Better to be lonely at the bank than popular at the pawn shop. Better to spend Friday nights building wealth than Monday mornings regretting the weekend. Better to have 2 real friends who support your growth than 20 fake friends who need you to stay small. Better to escape the bucket alone than stay trapped in it together. Stop complicating it. Start getting free.